Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thank you for joining us. Tucson's election is now in the hands of voters after ballots went out this past weekend. The race for mayor tops the ticket with 3 candidates running to replace Jonathan Rothschild. This week, Arizona 360 brought them together to discuss issues like public safety and the economy. But first, a refresher about the city they hope to lead. More than 500,000 people call Tucson home, making it Arizona's second largest city. Known as a leader in optics, aerospace, and defense, some of its largest employers include Raytheon, the University of Arizona, and Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. Economists at the U of A Eller College of Management say the Tucson Metro added jobs over the year at a faster rate than the country.
Can we get a soup?
But joblessness in the city also outpaces the rest of the state and nation. And nearly 1 in 4 residents live in poverty.
Thank you.
Mayors can make a difference when it comes to steering growth and spreading prosperity.
Okay, anybody else?
But in Tucson, their power has limits while they shape policy and vote with the city council. The role of chief executive officer goes to the city manager.
Entails working with our partners.
Currently Michael Ortega, who also oversees all municipal operations. Now vying to make their mark, independent Ed Ackerley, an advertising executive and professor at the U of A, and the Green Party's Mike Cease, who owns a computer consulting business, and Democratic City Councilwoman Regina Romero. And my thanks to all 3 of you for being here. We do want to stress this is not a debate, but we do want the viewer to hear your thoughts on some key issues affecting the city of Tucson as we move forward. You'll be managing a number of issues here in the city of Tucson. A number of topics will come to you as the next mayor. Let's begin with the job itself. Mr. Ackerley, let's move to you. The city of Tucson boasts a $1.4 billion budget. Let's say you're mayor and you can remove one item. What would it be?
Well, I think the duplication of effort with the county might be something that we look at both in parks and courts and other places where we're duplicating the effort of another governmental entity, and some of those could be shared with the county, and that would help us take that budget and expand it a little bit so we can do other programs. So I think looking at that from that perspective of how can we take back some of that duplication of effort that the county provides as well.
Mr. Cease, could you identify one area of the budget that you think needs to have a second look at?
Absolutely. There's historically been economic development has gone to funding out-of-state firms coming in, such as Caterpillar Industries, for example. We need to take a hard look at that, and under my administration, we're going to change and prioritize local Tucson businesses first.
Okay. Ms. Romero?
I believe that it is important to work together with other governments, other area governments. One place where I'd like to make sure that we're collaborating and hopefully joining forces is with the University of Arizona, with Banner, UMC, with other corporations, school districts, Pima College, to take a look at our transit system. Because I know that that the University of Arizona has Caltran, and so I'd really like to drill down in our transit system and make sure that we are collaborating, forming partnerships, and finding ways to continue investing in our transit system, making sure that we are working with Pima County and with other cities and towns in the region to see if we all cuddle together, put our money together, if it will make much more sense for the budgeting of that system.
Okay. Now, in addition to the race for mayor and 3 city council seat, voters also have a decision to make, as we know, about 2 propositions, Prop 205 and Prop 409. So let's start with Prop 205, better known as a Sanctuary City Initiative. It would restrict instances where police could question someone about their immigration status, as well as their ability to work with law enforcement like ICE and Border Patrol. The leader of the campaign told us this is designed to, quote, squeeze SB 1070 to its limit. Critics worry about the potential loss of state and federal dollars and say it would negatively impact public safety. So, Mr. Cease, let's begin with you. Let's say you're mayor, the measure fails, you want it. Is this the last we hear of it?
This is not the last we hear of it, no. This is important for the community. to protect all Tucson families. You're posing a hypothetical. The measure will pass despite the efforts of outside interference, a lot of money, and a lot of misinformation. The two things you cited about loss of federal income, federal money, loss of state money, those are both false. And
you anticipate it would get caught up in the courts, is what you're saying?
No, it will withstand court challenges because the measure was written to withstand that. But more importantly, there's been a legal challenge to the city of Tucson interfering in the election, and that's not. It's been done before. A lot of your viewers may not be aware that the city of Tucson attempted to suppress democracy earlier this year by illegally keeping the Green Party off the ballot.
You're referring to certain city leaders voicing their opinions about the issue.
This is interference in the election, yes, and there's
Which
a
is an
lawsuit.
accusation
There's a
at this
lawsuit
point.
about that. Correct.
Okay. Mr. Ackerley, Ms. Romero, you've both voiced concerns about this. Should it pass, potentially a $200 million budget shortfall when it comes from the state and the feds, how would you manage that sort of financial and potential public safety crisis that could result? Mr. Ackerley, we'll start with you.
I think it would be devastating to the economy for Tucson and for the budget. That's more than 10%. It could be even more than that of the budget that we have. We are already strapped trying to get enough police officers and fire and our roads fixed. And if we take $150 million out of that budget, 10% of the overall, that would really create a dynamic that would be difficult for the city to recover from. I don't believe that the initiative is going to pass, but if it does, I think it's going to immediately be challenged in court, and it would take some time before it became implemented over time. And I'm also not in favor of the issue of sanctuary city, of the label of sanctuary city being, even in the future, if the initiative passes, I'm against the label of sanctuary city for law enforcement, but also economic reasons down the line.
Ms. Romero, if you're mayor and the city faces this budget shortfall, where do you make ends meet?
As mayor, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to fight fiercely to make sure that we put together a legal strategy to not lose that money. There is a possibility, there have been threats by the governor and the state legislature that they will come after the city of Tucson if this initiative passes. So my position has been well documented. I do not support it because I know how the state is going to act. Now, if the voters of Tucson pass this initiative, then I will head with our legal team to the state Supreme Court and fight as hell to make sure that we are not in a place where we lose state funding, especially because that's $125 million that belong to the residents of the city of Tucson. It's not something that the state ledge gives us, right? It's something that belongs to the voters of Tucson. It is their tax dollars. And so what I would like to do, because I've been a proponent and I've passed the Immigrant Welcoming Cities ordinance in the city of Tucson, what I'd like to do is make sure that if this initiative fails, that we work as a community to make sure that the crux of the problem is attacked, which is SB 1070. That is a law that passed and the governor signed it, and they have, the state legislature and the governor have the ability to repeal it. And so the city of Tucson is not the issue. We are not the problem. The problem is SB 1070, and I think that we need to work together to repeal that initiative.
Okay, in the interest of time, we'll move on now to Prop 409. That would raise the salaries of the mayor and the city council, something voters haven't approved since 1999. The mayor's annual pay would rise from $42,000 to $63,000. City council members would see their salaries nearly double from $24,000 to $42,000 a year. Ms. Romero, I want to start with you. You've been on the council. Do you support this?
I believe in paying workers living wages, and that includes elected officials. What I have seen as a proponent of electing more women and LGBTQ plus communities and people of color, I have seen that it is very difficult to recruit, especially those that are heads of household, are not independently wealthy, or have a retirement check. And so I believe that it would be much better for our community to have much more diverse representation at all levels of government to pay a living wage. $42,000 is the median average wage of Tucsonans. I think that council members deserve that. And $63,000 is that medium average wage of administrators, which would be something that the mayor would get. So, you know, people that are not independently wealthy or are retired cannot really afford to run for office. So I believe in living wages, and I believe people should get paid for their dedication to the community. And yes, so I am a yes vote on 409.
Mr. Cease, do you agree with this proposition?
I do not support this measure, and I'd like to show why. As Rahina alluded to, I also support living wages. However, the community of Tucson as a whole does not have living wages. We don't have a $15 an hour minimum wage. Under my administration, we're going to enact that. So I think we need to take care of the community first prior to elected officials. So that's why I'm opposed to this measure. $15 an hour is that's a figure that's set for a living wage for all of the members of the community of Tucson.
Okay, Mr. Ackerley, we'll give you the last word on this.
I'm absolutely in favor of it. I believe that the bipartisan commission that came up with the recommendation thoroughly vetted this. And I also would say that, you know, we need to encourage people to run for office, and the incentive needs to be that they don't have to leave their business and not be able to afford to live. So they need to have enough money to live while they're serving in their civic duty and moving. So I'm a big proponent of this.
Okay, back to the issue of public safety. TPD employs about 800 officers in a city of 545,000 and tells me that it needs 950 for a population of this size. In Tucson, a new officer earns just over $47,000 a year. That's slightly less than what the surrounding towns of Oro Valley, Marana, and Sahuarita offer. The Pima County Sheriff's Department pays new hires about the same, but raises their pay to $53,000 after they complete an 18-month probation period, understanding that time that it takes to ensure that an officer is prepared and ready to hit the streets. How do you manage that in the interim, given the deficit, Mr. Ackerley? Well,
first off, there's 880 positions available that are already budgeted, but we can't find the officers to fill those positions. There's actually 763 commissioned officers at present. If you count the CSOs, there's a little more than that. But I think the issue has to do with we send 35 people through the academy, and not all of them last through that process, and maybe we'll get a dozen or 20 out of that. But at the same time, there's attrition on the backside of people retiring and people leaving for other forces. So the net loss to the city has continued over a period of time. We have to reverse that trend and figure out a way to get more officers through the academy, figure out another way of maybe having more academies so that we're filling the pipeline faster, so that we can fill those 880 positions and get that done immediately. And I do believe that public safety is the single most important thing that the mayor and city council can work on, and so it needs to be a priority in the budget, and it needs to be a priority for the city to reverse that trend of declining numbers. Back when Mayor Walkup was mayor, there were over 1,200 officers engaged in the Tucson Police Department, so we're down quite a few from that just a few short years ago.
Mr. Cease, any thoughts on how you manage that deficit in the meantime?
My office is going to take a hard look at this $1.4 billion budget, as I alluded to earlier. There's a number of different things that are going to be reprioritized, including public safety that Ed was referring to. I did have the opportunity a number of years ago to serve on the Citizens Budget Advisory Committee. And a $1.4 a billion-dollar budget. The money is there, but we need to go through it, and I will direct my staff to reprioritize in order to fund public safety and other measures.
Okay, Ms. Romero, same question.
The budget is $1.4 million, but that includes grants. The general fund budget is $566 million. We have to make sure that we continue budgeting for more classes so that we can continue training officers, because we have attrition. We have about 6 officers that retire per month. The mayor and council, and that's including myself, we recently gave an across-the-board 2.5% increase, plus we budgeted $3.5 million so that we could increase salaries for our police officers. Now we're at a place where we're much more competitive with the sheriff's department and cities and towns around the region. It is about budgeting, it is about putting it on the budget, on the general fund budget, but it's also about creating revenue for our city and being very, very aggressive about going for grants in the federal government. The federal government has many, many grants that we can tap into to hire more police officers. And so it is a public safety issue, it is a quality of life issue, and it is a priority to make sure that we serve our community and have good response times for our community, which is something that I've been hearing a lot of, and work together to get there.
Okay, let's keep the focus on funding and Tucson's economy. A common criticism the city receives hones in on its slow recovery from the recession, especially when compared to the Phoenix metro area. In 2017, business growth in the Tucson metro area increased 0.5%, while the rest of the state posted a rate of 3.5%. Now, in the past, the Tucson Metro Chamber has told us that infrastructure, like roads, often factor into a company's decision to expand or relocate to a new city. On the issue of roads, as we know, the Regional Transportation Authority is sort of coming to a close if you look toward 2026. Do you support, Mr. Ackerley, we'll start with you, an extension, a continuation of that, perhaps in the form of a 1/2-cent sales tax?
I do support the extension of that. I also support the possibility that part of the RTA funds would be used for maintenance. Maybe up to 20% of funds would be allocated towards maintenance of roads and repair of roads and repaving of roads where need be. And this would be the first time that the RTA would be involved in that, because normally they're involved in capital improvements and repairing, building roads as opposed to repairing them. So I think that if they move in that direction, that's a positive thing. But I am in favor of the reauthorization.
Okay, Ms. Romero?
Yes, I do. I want to, right now is the time where the sausage is being made with the Regional Transportation Authority. We have to make sure that the package that's being put together is fair and adequate investment for the citizens of Tucson, which contribute 45 or 46% of the taxes that go into the Regional Transportation Authority pot. We have to make sure that that package that's being prepared has maintenance and operation funds, that it has funds for complete streets, not just roads, but complete streets, that it has funds for transit. And so I do support continued investment in transportation and transit, but it really has to have a defined mobility approach to how we invest our citizens' taxpayer funds. And I'll tell you, infrastructure is one of the most important things that governments need to invest in. And as mayor, I will make sure that I work not just with the Regional Transportation Authority if we move in that direction, but also with the federal government and with the state government, because we need a good transportation and transit system to be able to have continued private investment in our community.
Okay, Mr. Cease.
So I do not support the 1/2-cent sales tax measure for a couple of different reasons. One is, Rahina alluded to this, that these funds are earmarked to primarily road building. We don't need road building. Road maintenance is an important issue, and we do need to address that. But more importantly, we also need to address a systematic change to our transportation system to support multi-modes public transit. This is under my administration, this is going to be systemically overhauled and systemically changed.
Okay, Mr. Cease, thank you. Let's start to wrap things up, and I want to start with you, Mr. Ackerley. Let's say 4 years comes and passes, you're the mayor. How is life different in the city of Tucson under your leadership?
I think one of the things we need to do as a community is invest some more in Visit Tucson and the marketing of Tucson as a wonderful place to live. I tell the story of getting on a plane and going somewhere, and you get off the plane and someone asks you, where are you from? You say, I'm from Tucson, and you begin to tell all the wonderful things about Tucson, but you get back on the plane, get off at TIA, and riding down Tucson Boulevard, many people start to complain about police, fire, roads, parks, and all the things that are wrong with Tucson. I think one of the things we can do in the next 4 years is to talk about the positive things that Tucson has to offer. It's a great place to raise a family. It's a fantastic place to grow a business. It's a great place to go to school. It's a great place to be stationed at Davis Month. And I think that we as a community need to begin to look at the positive things that we can do together and jump in together and solve problems and not always be complaining about all the terrible things that are going on, but jumping in and making our place even a better community. And that's what I would see in 4 years.
Mr. Romero, after 4 years and you're the mayor, how's life changed in the city of Tucson?
Under a Romero tenure, we will see a good quality of life, economic opportunities for families, and we will see our climate action plan in action. We need to make sure that we are bold and push the envelope in how we are creating our city of Tucson as a climate resilient city. We will see a diversified economic development strategy where we have a small business and startup incentive program in our economic development strategy. We must invest in our small businesses in this community. And we will see continued investment in quality of life issues, right? We need to have the appropriate amount of police officers and firefighters, continued investment in our infrastructure and roads, good partnerships with our congressional delegation, and hopefully that we continue working on making sure that we take advantage of what makes Tucson unique, right? Our nature, our history, our culture. We need to continue investing in those elements, protecting those elements, highlighting those elements so that we are a competitive, safe, clean, just, sustainable city with economic opportunity for all families.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cease, how's life different under a Cease administration in the city of Tucson?
Well, 4 years from now, after I'm elected mayor, we will look back and we will see a community that is responding on a massive scale for economic revitalization and for responding to the climate crisis. I mentioned earlier that this is not a small program. This is not incremental little changes. We're going to see hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses retrofitted with solar energy conservation and water harvesting.
Okay. We have just a moment of time left, and I want to get your thoughts on this. We've all had time to reflect on the Rothschild administration here in the city of Tucson. And I'd like to know if you could have seen Mayor Rothschild do one thing differently during his tenure, what would it have been? Ms. Romero, we'll start with you.
It's very unfair to start with. I've worked, it's been a pleasure working with Mayor Rothschild for the past 8 years. And he had a very clear approach to the investments he wanted to see in the city of Tucson. It's back to basics. It's very simple. We move together.
Could he have done anything differently?
I think that we could have done much more in terms of climate action, but that's what I see that I'd like to continue. I'd like to make sure that we're working on the successes of Mayor Rothschild's tenure and move on climate action, an aggressive a bold climate action plan, because that is an economic investment that we need in this community. And if we do not have a livable community without any future water resources, nothing else will matter. And so climate action and a diversified strategy for economic development. I think that we have to make sure that we continue our partnerships and our economic development strategy with Mexico, and we're in a space where we are ripe to continue that development with Mexico. So that I'll work on that as well.
Okay, Mr. Cease, anything that Mayor Rothschild could have done differently?
There's a number of things I would
How about
like
one?
to have seen, but the most important one is I would have liked to have seen Mayor Rothschild not be a vocal opponent of Sanctuary City. Sanctuary is a human right, and I've shared this example. I'd like to share it with your viewers, that when the horrendous atrocity committed by white nationalists occurred in El Paso a couple months ago, many of the victims were afraid to A, talk to the police, and B, go to the hospital to treat their wounds and injuries. So this collaboration does exist within our community, and that needs to change. And to say that I'm highly disappointed in Mayor Rothschild in vocally opposing this measure is an understatement.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ackerley.
It's hard to criticize Mayor Rothschild. He's a friend of mine, and I really respect what he's done over the last 8 years. I will say the one issue that's kind of been a sleeper for the campaign and for the whole entire election process is water. And I think that water hasn't really taken the forefront that it needs to. If we're going to be looking at sustainability for 50 years down the road, water becomes an issue, and that sometimes isn't talked about much at the council meetings and does not get the focus that it sometimes deserves. And I think that's something as a community that we need to address and bring to the forefront in a more robust way, and making sure that we have the resources available in the future that would be important for an increased population that's sure to come to Tucson over the next 20 years.
Okay, and that concludes our discussion with the 3 mayoral candidates. Thank you so much for your time. And as we have less than 20 days to go, best of luck to all three of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
We have more about the candidates running for mayor and city council on azpm.org, and we surveyed them on a number of issues. You can read their responses in our candidate guide. And as a reminder, you need to mail ballots back to the city by October 30th or drop them off at a designated location on Election Day, which is November 5th. And that's all for now. Thanks for joining us. To get in touch, visit us on social media or send an email to arizona360@azpm.org. We'll see you next week.